I'm Kara Winger, EOS Director of Athlete Services. We're here with another parody webinar with Gia Goodrich returning. I'm going to read directly from her Instagram bio. She is a gay ADHD having millennial helping founders on a mission build magnetic brands with video. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. She is our favorite rabbit hole to jump down on YouTube here at Parody's Service. Welcome, Gia.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be back. Last time was so much fun, and I am just like super passionate about helping people bridge this gap between the awesome way they show up in real life and translating that into the media landscape, because ultimately it really helps you create a context for who you are, what you do, get raving fans, and build an audience of people who are just excited to consume the content that you put out. And I've been very fortunate in doing this, in being able to see, there's one study, one like little quick case study of people that I've worked with that you can really see once you find that like special secret sauce of how you can show up in a way that's authentic, really seeing that kind of growth in terms of your audience, and then just really changing the relationship also with social media and creating videos. So yay. So I'm excited. Okay, what I would love to do really quickly is just go around and do intros. And so if you could say your name, what you do, and then also how you're hoping to use video.
I'll start. My name is Asia Evans. I'm a two-time Olympian and Olympic bronze medalist bobsledder for Team USA. Again, I'm so excited to be here with you. I learned so much from you from that first webinar that I'm excited to have you and to be able to even have more intimate conversations in this sense. I think for me, I'll be using a lot of video now to help with my social media, as well as the virtual world that I've gotten into now with webinars and doing a lot more speaking engagements virtually. Usually my speaking engagements and appearances all happen in person, and I'm able to engage with everyone. So learning how to balance my on-camera personality and just making sure that the video and everything is as captivating as possible is something that I'm really trying to get into. I know you gave me a lot of great tips last session, but some of the things I wanted to get more particular at with you was maybe some potential cameras I can look into as a starter camera just to have, as well as how to incorporate some of this video into my social media. I feel like this is great for a lot of the events and stuff that I have to do, but if there's ways to incorporate it also into like my strategy and social media and just doing more in that sense, I would love to get some pointers with that.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely.
Sweet. Yeah, so I'm Maddie. I run the 400 meters for Team Canada. Hoping to make this Olympic team, barely missed the 2016 team and went to my first world champs last year in 3 different events, which was awesome. And yeah, for video content, my plan is mostly for social media as well, kind of like getting into using it more on Instagram, building my brand there, and then a bit on TikTok. I'm currently doing this like creative learning fund for TikTok with a like social influencer company that partnered with TikTok. So just creating some like educational videos for them, but kind of struggling with how to make the videos super engaging and would love some more tips there. And then, yeah, just would like to get in, kind of like Asia was saying, to get into some more speaking engagements. I haven't done a ton, but there is a local school in North Carolina that I'm talking to try and do something with them, but just, yeah, figuring out how to do that virtually. So
Awesome. I love that. Kara, do you want to go?
Sure. Thanks for including me.
Yeah.
There's always multiple roles going on. So I'm Kara. I throw the javelin, a 3-time Olympic javelin thrower so far for Team USA, hopefully number 4 in Tokyo. Yeah, I'm not somebody that like talks to my phone for videos and stuff, but I have been doing that a little bit more, especially on like Instagram takeovers and things. So same like social media, I guess, overall focus, but I've also had a couple digital speaking engagements where one of them, like, I made a presentation so I couldn't see anybody that I was talking to. Like I was showing slides and then just like talking to my slides, and that was not successful. And then another one I didn't even prepare for, but like didn't have slides, so was just talking to the gallery of people, and it was like so much better. So being able to harness that is something that I would love to get out of today.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And then what about you, Sarah? Is there anything you wanna?
So I don't know if there's anything necessarily that I do with videos. I make TikTok videos, but that's about it. But I'm just, here for the ride.
Love it. Okay. Yeah, so this is really helpful too because what I bring up, I can kind of customize a little bit, especially between TikTok and Instagram, because a lot of what we'll go over today has to do with really like how to be charismatic. And that really extends across whatever video platform you're using. But there are a little bit of tweaks based on the culture of each platform, if that makes sense. Instagram has a different vibe than TikTok, all that stuff. Do any of you identify as introverts?
Yes.
Okay.
Me.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I feel like my journey with sports made me be more extroverted when I present myself to people that I don't know. Like, I feel like naturally I'm a lot more introverted. But again, when you're comfortable around family and stuff, it's like a whole entirely different person. But especially as I started pursuing Olympic sports, I felt like so many people actually knew who I was and was drawn to me that I didn't want to mess up a first impression by like just being shy and introverted. So I started to learn how to just kind of show a little more when I meet people. But I feel like naturally I'm a bit introverted.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad we have some of you who identify that way because I want to we'll talk about it a little bit, but really introverts are better suited to video, which I think is kind of like a mental flip. It's not something that we would necessarily expect, but people who identify that way, it's a lot easier to be charismatic because really what you want to do is create that kind of one-to-one connection that you would have like with your closest people. And for people who are extroverts like myself, I'm really used to that kind of like 1 to 500 connection, right? That kind of like being on stage, whatever. And that's the kind of energy that we really try to like strip out of video because when you see people who have that, there's just something that doesn't really click because there's that performance when really the way that we consume that kind of content is really on one-to-one. So let's dig into what I have. And you can see today, oh, can you enable screen sharing for me? And you can see today, because I'm in my mom's study, I'm gonna be fighting with the light a little bit. So I might kind of swing around in different places. So who has there we go, okay. All right, so the question for today as we go through is really asking yourself, what is holding me back from creating a magnetic presence with video? And really, when we think about it, it's this kind of like freedom to be able to pick up your phone, pick up your camera, and start recording and creating that content that's really aligned with your goals. We all have resistance, but really thinking about it, you might want to write it down if things come to you to really identify what that resistance is about. And if you don't know me already, it was a great intro, Kara. Thank you. I am primarily a commercial photographer and director. And then I've transitioned into this space of showing up on YouTube, showing up on video, doing speaking gigs where I really get to help people bridge that gap. And it's one of my favorite things to do. And I do it by being me. And that's what I love to teach people is being my weirdo, excitable, emotional self and doing that in a way that works together with my authority in the space to create connections. So you can find me, I'm going to make this talk available with this website link right at the bottom. So you can always go there. You can go back through these slides that have direct links. So I am on the internet with my portfolio is up there. You can find me on YouTube and then on Instagram. So for today, what we're going to go over is one really quick recap that you can dig into from the last webinar, but just to really go over it quickly on how to look better. Then thinking about how you can cultivate your charisma and how to create meaningful video content. So what I'm going to say is, and then question. So feel free if you have something to chime in, and it's not going to like throw me off or anything, because any question you have, I guarantee somebody else is going to be thinking that. And even if you, let's say, if you're not in a really loud environment, you can even keep yourself off mute and chime in a little bit if you want. It's totally up to you, but that's usually how I do things, because, you know, there's that kind of taking yourself on mute, off mute, that little lag that happens. So the question we have to start with is why video? And really, to my mind, it's about creating leverage, building an audience, creating a context for who you are and what you do, and making it so there's no competition. And I'm going to pick on one of my life friends. I've known her since I was 3, and she gave me permission to share this. But when you Google her, this is what you see, which is nothing to sneer at, right? She comes up, her website comes up, that's great. But when you Google me, this is what you see. You're immediately hit by pictures, and you can dive into these videos. And even just with these little, you know, videos that come up, getting that emotion is going to make it so that you have the potential to be more connected to me from the get-go. And it's just that little bit of edge that you can create for yourself, because any of those spaces where there's an opportunity, let's say a sponsorship or something like that, anybody that they're considering is going to be competent. That's why they're going to be brought to the table and just be in the conversation. So then it's really, how can you push yourself past that and create that little bit of edge that's really going to make you stand out? So going over what we did last time, which is of course really important, is how to look better in video. So the 3 things that we talk about are quality of light, camera angles, and your background. Once you have those together, you're going to be able to create good light no matter where you are, which is like for me, for example, I was all set up over to the side here, and then the light started streaming in and I swing around. But because I understand how light works, I can, no matter where I am. I was just in a hotel room the other day, and I was actually doing a meeting in the bathroom because they had a band of overhead light that was really helpful. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about the key light, which is the main light that's going to light your face, and answering the question, what's the best light for video? And you want to always have a strong key light to really separate yourself, create that hierarchy of information. So people are really just automatically, their brains can easily focus on your face. So to go into it really quickly, the acronym that is really great to come back to when we ask ourselves, what's a good light? It's soft, angled from above, in front, and large. And when you have that, you can see the difference between something that is hard versus something that's diffused, and really just figuring out how to sculpt that light in a way that's going to help you. Then, of course, we talk about angles, and this is something that is really easy. You can stack books, anything like that, getting those cameras close to eye line so you don't look distorted and crazy. All of these are things that undercut your power and authority and just create those little bits of barriers to showing up in the best way possible. All right, so let's dig into charisma. Charisma is this myth that we all have, that some people are born with it, right? And there is this amazing book. The link is in here that you can click on when you go to the presentation, that really it's not something you're born with. It's something that you cultivate. And it's a factor, it's a compound factor of 3 things. 1, power. Next, presence. 3rd, warmth. And all of these individuals are charismatic in different ways because they lead with one a little more strongly than the other, but because they're charismatic, they have a mix of all 3. This is a bit of review from last one. So if you want to dig a little bit more into this, we go a little more slowly in the last workshop. So you can always revisit that one if I'm moving a little too quickly. So the thing to think about is, what is your charisma mix and how can you play with your dials? So the example that I use is that power comes really easy to me. And for a lot of athletes and people who are performers and they have to stand out, they have to be competitive, power can be something that comes pretty naturally. But because I was leading with power, I was having a harder time connecting with my audience because I was intimidating them from the get-go. And as a commercial photographer, it's really important to create those connections, to have people feel safe in being vulnerable. And similarly now with YouTube, it is something that is really helpful for me to be able to disarm people. And I do that by turning up the warmth and turning up the presence and letting power sit there. I mean, I think most people, they don't look at me and think, that I don't know what I'm talking about, because that's where my power comes from with all these videos. It's clear that I know that I'm talking about. So I don't necessarily need to lean into that kind of proving myself thing, which I think happens a lot. So I can turn up those other dials. And again, if you want more information on how exactly to turn those up, we go into that in the other presentation. The next, and this is super important, is something I made up. It called your cultural constellation. And what this is a combination of your identity, your experiences, and your values. And when we're talking about making videos, this is the difference between somebody that we follow and we can't help but consume their content, maybe on Instagram, maybe on TikTok. There are a few TikTokers that I follow that I just like anything that they post. Like there's this Irish guy who just does response videos to like people doing decorating hacks. And there's something about him that's so charming and so lovely that I will immediately watch any video of his.
There's one who he predicts the paint color, like when drops of color going
yes,
in the
oh
paint.
my gosh, yes, it's so good. Yes, and so we all have these people that like we just immediately click into. And I think what's so great about all of you is you fall into this celebrity category, right? You're this type of superhuman that most people have trouble relating to, right? Most people don't think about being able to be an Olympian, being able to be a world-class athlete. And so you're already bumped into this place where you're perceived to have a lot of power and very different. So in bringing a lot of you into the equation, and we're going to talk more about authenticity and vulnerability and how to do that with video, but bringing in more of that is really going to help people connect super strongly with you in a way that where they're just excited to see what you're going to post next. But the way that you do that is by digging into your cultural constellation. So to clarify what this means, when we talk about identity, we're talking about things like your ethnicity, your cultural background, your gender, your sexuality, your ability and neurodiversity, anything that really has to do with that. It's in your soul, it's a part of your experience, it's how you're identifying and how you show up in the world. But then also when it comes to experiences, there are all sorts of things. Like I'm the eldest of 5. So I was always called bossy, and that's just a part of who I am. That's something I'm not really going to get rid of. And being able to lean into those things. What were the obstacles that you experienced? What are your interests, your expertise, all of that stuff. And a lot of times we're going to talk about the professional trap. But a lot of times what you see people doing is hiding a lot of that stuff because they're thinking about what people want to see. And in so doing, they're stopping that ability to really connect, or they don't want to like ruffle feathers and alienate a certain group of people by really leaning into what their values are. So these are things like your passions, your politics, your priorities. So in thinking about what your constellation is, this is an example for me. Like I'm gay, mixed black, ADHD having, permacurious, content creator, and an educator. In a nutshell, you get a sense of who I am. There's also all these other elements that are baked in, right? Like I'm probably going to be for LGBTQ rights, and I'm probably going to be for immigrant rights and things like that, leaning a little bit more toward social, what's it called? Social rights? I don't know. There's a name for that. Kara, do you have it?
We've talked about social justice a lot.
Social justice. Thank you. Like to me, it's just like the duh of it all. But you know what I mean?
The rights of humans,
you know,
yeah, for sure.
Right, exactly. Caring about humans, kindness, basic rights. But also leaning into, like for me, the ADHD is something that, you know, not everybody feels comfortable disclosing. But in my experience, what I found is by me being very transparent about the way my brain works and things that are sometimes funny, things that are sometimes frustrating, it really inspires people to feel that type of connection with me, either because they have that experience, they know somebody who has it, or they just understand that that kind of transparency is something that is refreshing and different than the people who are on a different level. You can't connect with them at all. So what you do when you lean into your cultural constellation is that basically you're creating these forks in the road. You're allowing people, instead of just like taking a straight basic bitch path forward, right, where you're vanilla and everybody is just kind of like, whatever, you're intentionally turning. And people are either going to turn with you and double down and be like, oh yeah, I love her even more, or they're going to turn away. And this is, I think, the big misconception that people have when they think about brand building, when they think about showing up, is they try to be all things to all people. And really, it's better to have a smaller audience of people who are obsessed with you than a larger audience of people who are more or less apathetic. And you can see when you go into stats, like what of these sponsors are looking for, it are things like engagement rate. And so it doesn't matter if you have, 500,000 followers, if only 0.2% are engaging, because most people are just like, whatever. They don't even see your stuff when they post. That is nowhere near as helpful as 10,000 people who are just on it, into you, into what you put out. So that is really the truth of how you become a magnet. And we're going to dig into more exactly the steps to make that happen. But the core idea really comes back to being okay, being yourself, leaning into who you are, what makes you different, what you think, what you believe, how you operate in the world, and allowing that, by being so clear and specific in that, allowing then you to attract the people who are really going to resonate with that energy. And that doesn't mean that everybody's going to have the same background, right? I have lots of people, like on YouTube, for example, I don't know why or how, but I've clicked into this group of like 60 something teachers, and they're awesome. And a lot of them are, white in middle America, and but there's something about my energy that they felt safe and clicked in with. We don't share a lot of things, but I've been so clear about my energy that they resonate with it. And that to me is totally awesome, that you can have people who are interested in who you are and what you do, who have a totally different experience. But because you're not pandering to what you think they want, you get the satisfaction of knowing that, Jody in Minnesota is like excited to watch my videos. So the way that we do this is by being authentic. And I think it's important to define some of these terms. So in this sense, I mean being true to one's own personality, spirit, or character. And I'm going to show you a moment. Well, yeah, we'll just watch it and then we'll talk about it. So this is from a video from me.
Gia, should we hear it?
Oh, yeah. You can't hear it?
No.
Oh, no. Okay, hold on. Let me just see if I can do a little zhuzh situation. Format options. Video playback. It's not on mute. Okay, well, I will invite you then to go check it out and we'll talk about it. So basically what that video, here, hold on, let me keep going. Okay, so basically what that video illustrates is just an intro of mine where I'm not pretending to be any certain way. And I immediately go into the kind of feeling as to why we're wanting to, or basically it's like the dissonance between knowing that a newscaster is like a big deal person, but then they're calling in to CNN and you see their Zoom situation and there's just a part of you that's like, what? But you're a big deal person. And like, why does that look so craptastic? And then there are other people who look great. But in that process, it was right after they called the election. And so I mentioned that, and just these little kind of sprinkled moments of showing who I am that allows and creates for these kind of forks in the road. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't absolutely know what I'm talking about. And that doesn't mean that people can't trust that the information I'm going to give them is really great. But by bringing that kind of relatability, talking to the camera like it's a friend, I'm creating that kind of connection. So the question to ask yourself when it comes to authenticity is, how would I show up if I knew I would be unconditionally accepted and appreciated for who I am? And this is not typically the way that we approach content creation, right? We approach it from this way of trying to kind of like be the good kids, right? Like not ruffle any feathers, not get in trouble, all that kind of stuff. So the next part of this that I think is really important is talking about vulnerability, which for our purposes is opening yourself up to attack or damage, but basically means that you're sharing something that puts you out there. It's, as Brene Brown talks about, I'm just going to read it because it's so amazing. The definition of vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. But vulnerability is not a weakness. It's our most accurate measure of courage. When the barrier is our belief about vulnerability, the question becomes, are we willing to show up and be seen when we can't control the outcome? When the barrier of vulnerability is about safety, the question becomes, are we willing to create courageous spaces so we can be fully seen? And when we're talking about vulnerability in terms of your content creation, it's basically, do you have the guts to show who you are, knowing that when people are then critiquing you, they are very much critiquing you. And that's, a lot of people put that barrier, that little bit of facade or mask up, because it feels better when somebody attacks you, because it's like, well, you don't even know me, right? But when I'm putting up a video, it is, well, yeah, you kind of do know me. And so then when you're saying you talk too much, or then when you're saying you need lip balm because your lips always look chapped, it's like, it's really attacking me. And, and obviously those are things that have actually been said, which, I don't care about it at all. But that's the thing, is it does impact you potentially. And even though you try not to, but it's those moments that really create that connection that's so powerful. So I'm going to not show you this in the chance that you can't hear it, right?
No.
Okay. So in that clip, and you can find all of these on my YouTube. That one is the one about glasses. So in it, I'm talking about glasses. And in this moment, I was saying that I'm all about using what you have, right? Like, you don't want to go out and spend a whole bunch of money when you have resources around you. It's about being creative. And I was telling a story about how I was trying to block out the light for my glasses, and my place was a disaster, and I happened to find this thing. And there was this moment in the video where I actually say this out loud, where I say, should I show you? I'm getting that twinge in my solar plexus that tells me that I should be brave, because I really don't want to be judged. You could potentially judge me, but I'm just going to show you my mess. And so I turn around and I show the mess. Now, for me, what's going on behind the scenes is I'm thinking, well, one, we just want to get, I'm sure there are people who are just going to scroll through. They just want to get to the meat of it. Is this self-indulgent or, whatever? Then there's also the deeper part that's like, oh, well, I don't necessarily want to be on the internet for being messy and whatever. But I trusted my gut in that moment and I shared it. And I got all of these comments, and most of them referenced that moment specifically. Like this one said, when you said you get that little twinge of not wanting to be judged and it tells me I need to be brave, I just stopped. I had to replay it a few times and really let it sink in. Aside from the awesome truth bomb about being brave, love what you're doing in your channel, blah, 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 right? So it was this moment and there were more. So it was this moment when I wasn't even intentionally wasn't a part of my map, wasn't a part of my plan. It was just me trusting my gut and being authentic. And I've gotten, I think it's no coincidence that that video has gotten a lot of views compared to a lot of other ones, because it's those moments, those like cracks in the veneer that allow people to just really feel like, oh my gosh, me too. And that's what was a big part of what people were commenting on. They were like, oh my gosh, thank you. Because I look at your videos and you look like you have it all together. And it's just so great to know that right around your feet, you have, not all the time, but a lot of time, you have all sorts of cords and cables, and it looks crazy. So when we're talking about vulnerability, I want to, though, be clear that it is a spectrum. And to me, I see this spectrum as existing between ice queen and a hot mess. And the ice queen is, like we've talked about, the, you know, the impervious Olympian, untouchable human, right? Zero relatability. That person has nothing to do with my life. I maybe even resent that person because it seems like they have it all together, whatever, nothing to do with me. Hot mess, on the other hand, is the opposite end. And there are a lot of YouTubers who I actually love watching that fall into that category where they're like crying every other minute. It's all about them. And what happens is you end up losing authority if you're just in that kind of self-indulgent zone. So it's really about creating that mix and being able to slide into different places depending on what's appropriate. And the key for me and how you discern that is trusting your gut and really thinking about whether or not you're being authentic to yourself while you're recording content. So one person who is a great example of this is Lauren. And if you haven't taken a look at her Instagram lately, I would just go through and kind of look at the ratio of posts, right? You have some that are like the muscles and the action and the lit, like, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then you have the training, but then you also have moments where it's like, I'm a nerd flying and I'm going to be judged because I'm like really overly doing it with this stuff and it's fine. And then I had an emotional moment because of the first vice president-elect being a woman, and really creating this mix that allows you to just like absolutely love her.
I told her on that plane picture, I was like, how are you wearing glasses under all that stuff? Like, the fog must be so real. I can't even understand.
One of the cool parts about that plane picture too is like her caption, because not only was she looking like that, but she also said a comment about how she's used to people looking at her because she's a Jack Olympian or whatever. And I think that is awesome how she just owned the vulnerability from so many different perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. I think we all, I mean, I think even if we didn't know her, we would all think about these posts and smile in that same way. And that's the thing, is that like you feel this kind of heart connection. And so it's really teaching yourself to do that instead of falling into what I call the professional trap, which, you know, I've referenced before, but really it's this idea of playing to the audience, playing to the imagined they. And sometimes that they are companies, right? They're sponsors. They're people who, you know, potentially have, you know, could get you great gigs and great money and things like that. But as soon as, so it's okay to factor that in, right? But you have this amazing internal guidance system that is your gut. And when you start to fall into the professional trap is when you stop listening to that. And instead, you're listening to these external sources, or sometimes your own projected imagining of how you should behave, being the type of person that you are. And this is something that really stalls people's growth, really makes it so that they aren't going to build that audience, aren't going to be magnetic, because they fall into this trap. And it's okay if sometimes like you slide into it, but really being able to recognize it and push yourself out is really key. So the question to come back to is, are you allowing people to see you in your beautiful complexity? Because that's the truth of us as human beings. We are deeply complex. We are bad bitches, but we're also like little kids on some level that just are looking for love and meaning in the world. We're all of these things. We're nerds, and you know, we geek out to certain songs that, like, I love a good Spice Girls moment, you know, and like being able to dance like a dork and being able to have all that mix and invite people in. Because if you're not, and you are doing this where you're projecting a version that you think people want to see, people are super astute and they will feel it on some level. And I can think of, I mean, there are a lot of people actually that I can think of, but there's one YouTuber in particular. Her name's Sunny Lenarduzzi, and she's somebody who does like these kind of YouTube tips and tricks. And I followed her for years, but never really clicked on her videos. And she actually had the extrovert typical problem of like the showman kind of thing that she would do. And so it would be like, hi, I'm, you know, and just like there was something about it that I was just like, ooh. And recently, actually, she had this kind of come to Jesus moment where she was just like, I am not being myself. I'm not letting people see me. I'm just gonna do it. And all of a sudden, I just like, she cracked open, I cracked open, and I love her so much more because instead of her playing this role of the 7-figure business that has all the knowledge to teach you, she was a person who has made this business, but also still thinks that sometimes her decisions might backfire and sometimes, you know, doesn't want to get out of bed in the morning, but also is really inspiring and doing all of these things. And that mix, I think, is really so important. So how do we do this? And one of the core awkward-horrific things is like, how do you take the vacuous space that is a camera and turn it into something that will allow you to connect in a way where people feel like you're talking to them in their room? And the way to do that I've seen the best way, is to pretend that that lens is a friend and really use your imagination. It doesn't really help if you are just thinking of like a friend. You really need to think of someone specific. And so this is me. This is my friend Sis and I when we were gay babies 10 years ago. And she now is, go to her Instagram. It's so fucking cool. It's such a great lesson in like finding that right vibe. And not to toot my own horn, but her Instagram strategy did come from a series of conversations that we had about how she could show up and how she could really be herself, because she had this classic problem of like not wanting to seem narcissistic, not having people think like, who does she think she is? And just what to post. She had all these things and she's really hit this fabulous sweet spot where she's really created this really strong brand for herself. But she's somebody who's a bad bitch. Like she just, when you give her a pair of scissors, you give her a hair, I was going to say a face, but yes, the stuff that's attached to your face, she is just knows exactly what to do. And she's a genius in that zone. However, when it comes to video, she still has a lot to learn. So what I do, and I still to this day, when I start rolling, I take a second and I think about how would I say it to her? Like if I was just talking to my friend Sis, what would I say? How would I show up? And that specificity allows me to really connect in a deeper way instead of getting into that kind of guarded place that we can get to when we're talking to our phones, talking to our cameras. One great for those of you who maybe are feeling a little bit shy when it comes to creating videos, because I know photos and videos is a jump. And it really, because of the potential vulnerability and authenticity and exposure and all of that stuff and the real-time element, it can be really nerve-wracking. And this is a great video to watch. And it's great to watch as a case study because she is like totally shy, soft-spoken person. But she's also talking about her journey because she has over 100,000 subscribers, right? So she's talking about her journey to building her presence, but her camera presence isn't like mine. I just naturally have a lot of energy. I'm an extrovert, right? But for her, it's more subdued. It's more quiet and you engage in the content differently. You kind of lean in when you're listening to her. And there's something about her that is really soothing and lovely and wonderful as a contrast to somebody who has higher energy. So the key to this whole thing, and we're going to talk about content because this is where, now that we've established how to try to really unlock your eunice, we need to get to this place of like, but what do you create, right? So the key mindset thing to get you to bridge that gap is to take the attention off of yourself. Now, this comes from acting. In my last lifetime, I was an actor that was in a couple C- movies and commercials. Yeah, we don't really.
Can you link them, please, when you're following?
I know. I was like, oh my god. Well, okay. I will add to this just because you asked, Kara. I will add Harvest of Fear. The movie where I was killed by a serial killer killing teenagers that were drinking. I will link that just because you asked, and it's perfectly embarrassing. Yes. I don't even know how we got onto that. Thank you very much.
Creating content.
Oh yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm blushing so hard. Oh yes, for acting. Okay, so I was a trained actor, and one of the things in acting technique that they teach you is to take the attention off of yourself. So when you think about those moments when you're getting ready to hold that camera or whatever, and those thoughts come rushing in, they're like, who does she think she is? Oh my gosh, you're so awkward. What are you even going to say? All of that kind of stuff. What that is it's your attention being on you, right? It's you analyzing and judging and worrying, but it's all in here. All of that attention is focused towards you. And what this idea is, and what in acting they teach you, is to take the attention off of yourself and put it out there, right? So your attention can be on what are you trying to communicate, or focus on the person that this video is for. And by doing that, you allow all of that internal critique system to kind of melt away and allow you to really channel your authenticity, because this is the big hang up, is having the attention on yourself. Because the truth is, we're all insecure, and we all are preoccupied and too busy with what's going on with us to really judge anybody else. And even if we do judge somebody, it's just because we're being insecure about our own situation. It really has nothing to do with them. So to like really bust the ego bubble, I think we have this misconception in our culture that like posting pictures of yourself and making videos really means that you have a big ego. And I guess arguably sometimes it does. But more often than not, it means that you are able to get over your ego, get over that self-criticality, to be able to create the content that can really resonate with people. And that's the power that all of you have, right? Is that you have people who are in their bedrooms, you know, thinking about what they can achieve and what they want to do, but they don't see a path there. And the content, you existing in the world as yourself, but also as a symbol of what somebody else can achieve, is inherently powerful. And if you are allowing what is essentially your ego to stand in the way of that, your criticality, your judgment, all of that stuff, what you're actually doing is in a way being self-centered. So by taking the attention off of yourself and saying like, hey, I have experiences that would be helpful for someone. I have a story that could really be beneficial. I have something I wish I knew I needed to hear. And I also know that like somebody who thinks that all we do is practice and are super serious and doesn't think that we ever have fun, this might be something that they need to see, right? That all of this stuff is important to be able to translate. So making sure that you are popping your ego, you're getting out of your own way to be able to do that. And one of the focuses that I really, okay, so now I'm going to see, hold on, let's see if we can get into a different space here. Because now I'm chasing this sun situation. So one way to do that is to really focus on value and thinking about what it is that you are able to offer, that you're able to give to people. Because really, we are all trading something. And what you're asking somebody to do is trade their time and attention, all the different amazing shows on Netflix, all the amazing influencers, all of this stuff to engage with your content. So thinking about that from that non-selfish way, like why would somebody trade their time for this? Is a really important question to keep coming back to, adding that value. And there are three main types of videos that we engage with, right? The videos that educate us, that engage, and the ones that entertain. And ideally, if you can think about creating mixes of those, that's really ways that you can get more people really excited to see the kind of content that you create. So in terms of what kind of videos you should be making, I like to think of it like this. You have on the one side your superpowers, which are like your interests, your passions, your expertise, your culture constellation, all that stuff. Then on the other side, you have your audience's pain points, their interests, their questions. What do they really want to know? What are they searching for? And then that's where you have the content heaven, right? Is where the two of those things. So there are going to be some things that you're totally interested in, but nobody really genuinely cares about, right? I'm trying to think a good example for me. Yeah, I don't know if I can think of, if I think of one, I'll come back to it, because there are a lot of ridiculous things that I'm into that like I would never post videos about because, you know, they're just like not helpful. But there might be things that are audience pain points that you're not at all interested in doing or are not your superpower, right? So for example, I know that a lot of people right now, well, people with Zoom ask me like, oh, well, what's a good makeup for Zoom? And because I have other Zoom videos. And for me, that's sitting outside of my superpowers, interests, passions, and expertise. So instead of me making that video, I say, hey, here's a great person who makes a great video. I'm going to send you there. Instead of me trying to really play to something that I'm genuinely not interested in and don't really know as much about as I would want to create a video. And so really figuring out where that sweet spot is that you can create content about. And so for TikTok, it might be, the sweet spot might be, you know, trends that you're into that you think are really funny. And that might just automatically be it because you're interested in it and people are interested in seeing that content because it's trending, and that's the content heaven, right? There are also some TikTok channels that are informationally based also. So really with TikTok in particular, you can see what types of videos people are making and use that model for yourself. We're going to talk about that with YouTube, an example, in a second. Actually right now. So when you're creating, and I know not like none of you have mentioned YouTube, which is totally fine. The one reason I'm very into YouTube is because it is the #2 search engine on earth, and it's owned by the #1 search engine on earth. So you can have a video from 5 years ago on a certain scrub that you use, or like, let's say a certain soothing balm, right? That like helps with joint pain or something like that. You can have 5 years later, people still searching for that pain point, find that video, find your channel and become subscribers and build your audience that way. So here are two, and these are linked again. Here are two people who are athletes who have YouTubes that are that mix of what they do, and we'll talk about specifically different types of content ideas and who they are and their cultural constellations and merging them together. But what you can do is take some of those ideas and also apply it to Instagram videos and TikToks. So the thing to ask yourself, hold on. Okay. So the thing to ask yourself is, what would you have loved to see with your sheroes growing up? Like, what would you have loved to know? Like the people that you were super fascinated with, was it the javelin, Kara?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So like you as a little wee tiny thinking about, like this is cool. And I want to, you know, like you must have had people that you were like super interested in and like following them and wanting to know more about them. What kind of content would you have gobbled up? Would it have been like, how are they training? Or how do they get their mindset? Do they listen to certain music to get in the zone? How do they think about it? Like all of this stuff is, you know, you can access through your own genuine interest to come up with content ideas. And then we can think about it from that past perspective, but also from your current perspective, right? So the people who are celebrities and interesting people who you follow, what are your burning questions with them, right? So like there have been a big pivot lately on YouTube and on podcasts of A-list celebrities moving there. So like Brie Larson is a great example. She just came onto YouTube and she's doing like these videos on like her grandmother's apple pie recipe, right? And different characters, what truth or drink with different characters, whatever. But the reason her channel is working so well is because there's all this, you get to see like the little spotlight of who she is, get this idea of who she is, but there's all this other part to her that we know that exists. And so it's her showing that, right? So now she's a Victoria's Secret supermodel. So there's lots of like other stuff to go on that. But one of the things that she does really well is she has a lot of content ideas. So I would recommend going here and even if you're not thinking about creating videos on YouTube, what you can do is go by this little, so go to somebody, go to their videos, go to the sort by, and sort by most viewed. Then you will see what is the content that people are really engaging with and interested in. And then you can take that content and make an equivalent on TikTok. You can create an equivalent on Instagram. And you have this kind of background of knowing, okay, people are interested in it. But with her and other ones, there are some key content ideas that are really easy, kind of low-hanging fruit that people absolutely love, which are things like behind the scenes and vlogs, well, what I eat in a day, how I train, morning and evening routines, workouts, a day in the life, lessons that you've learned, mindset stuff, and best advice that you've given. All those kinds of things are areas that people are just like totally wanting to consume content in that could be really easy content for you to make. And let me see. Okay, really quickly, I just want to go over one thing that I think is really helpful when we talk about creating content, creating videos, is especially if you're experiencing anxiety, is making a script. So a lot of my videos are scripted, which is not to say that every line is written out, but I go through this process and this process is really helpful. So I think about, okay, what's going to hook them? What's the introduction? And then what is the outcome that they're going to get? So these are for more informational videos, but I want you to see how I structured them. And then the different areas, right, that I'm going to dig into. But what I do when I'm creating these is I say them out loud like I'm saying them to my friend Sis. So like, for example, this just says, stick with me on this video. And it's because, and this is, I do it a little bit in shorthand, but I'm imagining talk to her and having this, you know, somebody say like, okay, this video is like 22 minutes long. And so me saying, okay, I know the video is 22 minutes long, but just stick with me because And mapping out your ideas beforehand and having them to come back to you is a really helpful thing to quell anxiety, but also give your videos a focus. As long as, and this is kind of going back to the professional trap, as long as you're not doing it super robotically. So what I recommend is writing this out by speaking it, so you sound authentically like yourself, and then coming back to it and looking down, taking a little bit, and then saying it to the camera. Okay, and then this is my bonus hack, and then I want to like get to some questions and answer anything we didn't go over. But this is something that has been super transformative for me and the people that I've worked with. It's this idea of a ribbon drawer. And what's funny is because you're athletes, you probably literally have had ribbon drawers, whereas a lot of people might not have had it. But it's this idea of creating a digital space where you collect your wins. You collect those moments when people have commented that they've said, and I literally have an album on my phone where I'll screenshot something when somebody was like, oh my gosh, I love that. That was so great. Thank you so much. You know, all of these things that I might not dip into very often, but it helps me reorient when I'm not necessarily wanting to make a video or I'm getting in my head, I'm critiquing myself. And it reminds me, no, you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it to create content that other people can engage with. And by you being authentic and showing up in the world that way, it empowers others to show up in their best way. So I really encourage you to start an actual folder on your phone. I do it in my photos and do screenshots and just start compiling them there. And it really helps wire these grooves in your brain that help you develop that confidence in this area that is kind of, you know, a weird beast. And then lastly, what I'll say is this is my favorite meditation quote that I come back to by Bill Withers, who's a wonderful, incredible, incomparable jazz musician who just passed away. But he said, you can't get to wonderful without passing through all right. And when it comes to creating this content, when it comes to showing up on video, when it comes to being magnetic and authentic and all those things, you just have to know that sometimes you are not going to hit the level that you want to hit. You know, like sometimes the the work that you do is going to be embarrassing. Like my video that has like almost 700,000 views, I don't go back and watch it because it's embarrassing. Like, you know, I don't like it. I don't love it. I'm glad it exists in the world. I'm moving on, moving forward. But I also try to do my best to really honor the process and allow myself to grow. So yay. All right. So let's take, I mean, we have just a tiny bit left, and I'm fine going a little bit over, but I want to respect all of your time. But I would love to address anything specific that came out of that or questions from around that we didn't quite get to.
I have a quick question real quick. So this one relates to when you were talking about being super clear about your energy and just like coming off that kind of after talking about the constellation concept as well, and really being clear about those values and your energy. But one of my questions relates to like, how long did it take you to kind of build that up? Because I feel like it does take time to establish that energy and like being so clear about it. So how long did it take you of making these videos for you to really feel like, and for your audience to feel like, yes, this is who she is, if that makes sense?
Yeah, totally. No, and that's a great question, because you're right. It kind of, I think Tony Robbins says this, right? That like change actually happens in an instant, but it's the lead up, like getting to that change that takes a long time. And so to that point, I had a lot of years where I was kind of half-assedly showing up, basically. I was doing, you know, on Instagram, like doing the sexy pictures that I had made. And I was doing behind the scenes of my photography, but really showing up. I mean, there would always be moments where I would be kind of funny or whatever, where a little bit of my personality would come through. But it was more about playing this part of the successful commercial photographer. And it really was it was a moment where I said, like, I don't think this is it. I don't think this is right. Like everybody that I follow that I'm interested in is actually showing me who they are. And I have people in real life that like me. So why do I have all these people following me that are really apathetic to me and, you know, and aren't even interested in who I am or what I'm doing? But after I made that decision to show up, it was a transition in a sense that took time because I had worn these grooves of the professional trap for years. And so I had to keep reminding myself. And to me, you know, I firmly believe the biggest gift that we have is our, and you can call it your gut, your solar plexus. I call it my internal guidance system. But, you know, there's that thing in our bodies a lot of times that tells us whether we should move toward or move away from something. And when you're living in that professional trap, you are pushing that voice down. So it's taken me a while, and it's still, I mean, it's not like I'm magically there. I still have to really nurture that and remind myself. And like that example in the glasses video was a moment of that, where it was like, I mean, in that case, I actually said it out loud, what was going through my brain, that like, I'm feeling this ping in my solar plexus, which means I have a choice. I can either be brave or I cannot. And I'm trying to be the boldest version of myself, the bravest version of myself. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And I think the universe rewards you when you show up as your boldest self and you risk emotional exposure and everything. So yeah, I hope that helps. It's a meditation, it's a practice, and it's something you have to keep coming back to. But the more momentum you get, so that's really, the more momentum that happens of you doing it over time, the more like ribbons you have in your ribbon drawer, the easier it is.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So similar question.
Question.
Oh, sorry, Asia. Just because it builds off that, I was like thinking the same kinds of things during the professional trap like section. I think as female athletes, like especially from really young ages, like we're very used to like doing what our coach says and following like best practices in like nutrition or training or whatever. So it can be really hard to actually know who you are until you're like a certain age, or you go through something like an injury, or like your athletic ability is like stripped away suddenly. So you have to do some soul searching, or else you're like in big trouble. Like I drank my face off when I first hurt my back in college. So do you have any advice on like how to do that, like whether it's journaling or, figuring out who you are, because we're often told who we are from a really young age. And I think the advantage that Lauren has specifically is that she was in the corporate world. So like she knows her value because she's seen all these people that like aren't as good as she can be.
Yeah,
and she has this like perfect example. So some of us like don't get that until we're in this corporate world. So like in this job, like I've all of a sudden been like, oh, my gut was right, but I didn't know how to act on it. And I'm like finally learning those lessons, but that's not something I don't think I would have ever learned as a solo artist, as an athlete,
Yeah, totally. That's such a wonderful question. And I think it's a simple answer that's not necessarily easy, right? I think one part of it is really, and you as athletes, you'll understand this, right? It's about your input, right? What are you allowing in? And there are lots of, if you listen to podcasts, for example, there are a lot of podcasts of people who will just like be in that energy where you're listening to their stories and it's just reaffirming and wiring those grooves of like, yeah, I can show up and I can be bold. I can do this. I can, but a part of it also is, I think, learning to tap in and finding that space of quiet non-stimulation. So I do have ADHD, and so meditating is just like so hard for me. So hard. So I have to free write. So I do this thing called mirror no. What is it called? I've been doing it for years. It's from a book called The Artist's Way, Morning Pages. But it's just like basically you do a brain dump onto paper for 3 pages in the morning. And I just do like a blah, 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 whatever's there. And it's a lot of like childish, stupid, whatever, money. I'm gay. So it's like money, girls, like success, all this kind of stuff, all the insecurities. I just dump it all out. And then the last page actually that I write is me intentionally like creating how I want to think about that day and what, I'm thankful for having had happen. So it's future pacing. So it's me pretending like I've already experienced my day and it's gone beautifully. And I'm like thanking the universe for that, if that makes sense. But that practice has been really helpful. And it doesn't have to be that. It could be yoga. It could be meditation. It could be, there are lots of different ways to get at it, but it's just strengthening that connection between the unconscious part of you that if you don't listen to, will send you backaches and will send you like physical manifestations to be like, hey, you need to listen to me. Training yourself to listen to that and really strengthening that connection. Yeah.
Thank you.
But also, and I wasn't planning on mentioning this, but on January 7th, I'm launching the Bold Bitch podcast, where the whole idea of it is talking to other people who have like really trained themselves to be bold. Because I think boldness really, the way I define that word is being willing to be authentic to yourself, despite whatever consequences might come. And that's not something that I am all the time, right? But it's what I work toward. And and I think that that's something that is a meditation, a life's work to figure out how to do, but is definitely worth doing. Yeah. Okay, Asia, what were you going to say?
So back when you were speaking about just how to find that kind of content heaven and using your audience perspective a little more, as far as like social media engagement goes, like, are there any ways you suggest to just kind of better understand your audience perspective? Like, I know I've seen people that use like the polls and stuff on like the Instagram story, or is it just kind of putting things out there and seeing what feedback you get?
Yeah, another good question. Well, great question. Is because it's both of the things that you said. So you kind of answered it also. So one is getting that direct feedback. And I think it's a great way to kind of demonstrate vulnerability there too, is to say like, hey, I'm really wanting to create content that's like meaningful and interesting to you all. Like, what do you want to see from me? What are you curious about? And really getting that feedback is super key and super valuable. But then also testing. like you said. And really, you know, I would maybe think like go to some people that are really rocking it, that are maybe, they might be in the same space as you, but they might be totally different, like that Victoria's Secret supermodel, right? Where it's like, if you look at the actual content that she's putting out there, how can that translate? And just testing and seeing what sticks. And then once you find
Okay.
things that stick, really doubling down on that. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have no more questions.
You look like you're gonna say something, Kara.
No.
Yay. Well, I mean, unless there's anything else, I hope that this was helpful. I'm just going to push again just a little bit into thinking about YouTube, because a lot of the thing about Instagram, well, okay, the big exception is Reels. Okay, so if you are wanting to really grow and expand on Instagram, using Reels is right now really powerful. The algorithm is really pushing Reels, which is very similar to TikTok. You can cross-pollinate with that content. But figuring out like let's say somebody wants to see what you eat in a day, which, I mean, it might sound basic and boring, but people, especially athletes, they really do want to see that stuff. Like, what are your routines, blah, blah, blah. So by filming just a tiny bit and putting it to a poppy song or, you know, whatever, like that's the kind of content that can really generate some stuff. That would be really great. But also, you know, YouTube is a longer lead thing for sure. Because it takes a while for people, well, it takes a while for the algorithm to appreciate you, basically. You kind of have to earn your stripes. And then once you do, the algorithm's like, okay, well, you know, like this person has been here for a while. They're consistent. We're going to push it out there. But the benefit is that, like I said, you have searchability, discoverability for years. And, you know, like I went from 1,000 subscribers that took me like 2 years to get to 20,000 subscribers in like a month and a half because of one video, basically. And so it's kind of like playing the lottery in that sense, but you can build, they just, people sit with content for a long time, and it's just, there's a lot of great things on YouTube. But TikTok similarly is a great fast-paced way to get attention and energy going to. And the great thing about that, and so similarly, Instagram Reels and TikTok are kind of in the same space, is that it's about like the silly, the fun, the behind the scenes part. And so it really does create that kind of connection where people feel like they're seeing behind the curtain into who you are.
I have a question with branching out into YouTube. So say like athletes like myself, I've already kind of been established in sports and everything that I do, but in YouTube, I feel like it's such like I don't know where to start with putting out the content. So as far as like starting my YouTube and just even giving that platform an idea of who I am, do you suggest like we start with kind of a more personal like intro? Like if I were to start putting out YouTube videos now, is it like straight going into the type of content I would put out, or kind of giving them an overview of even who I am with like branching out into YouTube? I don't know where to start. And I think that sometimes that scares me away from even getting started in the first place.
Yeah. Well, the thing about YouTube is it's kind of like popping into a marathon that you know is happening, right? So you're just like jumping into the race and running for a little bit and popping out. It's not so much about being there at the start or being there at the finish, right? So you as the content creator are going the whole time, but people are just going to pop in and pop out. So to that end, it's very non-linear. So I don't think you need to have an intro or anything like that. You could start with, and those examples. So the link, I'm just going to put it here. GiaGoodrich.com/WIB. So when you go to that link, you'll be able to access all the slides with links and all that kind of stuff. I would really recommend going to those 3 YouTubers, 2 of them that are athletes and one that is a model, and looking at the type of content. You could easily start with what I eat in a day. You could easily start with my workout. You could easily start with things like that and kind of ease your way into other stuff. But that is the kind of stuff that's going to get seen, because there is, and this is the part, I'm glad it's coming up. It's a little bit tough to navigate sometimes, but there's the strategy and then there's the authenticity, right? And you have to find your own mix, because if I'm making videos all day long, well, actually, if you go to my channel, you'll see I'm trying to experiment with doing more videos around what I'm interested in, which is basically like doing these life experiments, trying different things and seeing like how is this? So like I tried Botox and lip fillers, and I ended up kind of having like this emotional breakdown because about beauty and like it actually made me feel better, but then what does that say about me and all this kind of stuff, right? So that was a content piece that I felt good about, and that people who've commented that, those are like my ride or die people that watch that, right? And so it was a way for them to connect with me, get deeper into my brain. But I also know that I can't just make videos like that, right? Because nobody's interested or nobody's searching for that. And so you have to give people like kind of like a funnel, right? So people find me because of Zoom. So I'm still making videos around Zoom and how to show up on video and all this kind of stuff. But I'm also putting in that, I'm sprinkling in a lot of who I am. But then also I'm creating content that I know probably is more of a connector than going to bring a new audience. It's more for people who are already there, who are interested in what I'm interested about. So there is a little bit of that strategy. And the best way to do that is that mechanism of finding a YouTuber who's rocking it, who's in a similar-ish space, going to their videos and sorting by most viewed. And then boom, you will get like a recipe for videos that people want to see. And then you think about how can you put your spin on it? And, you know, that's a great way to get started. Yeah.
Does time factor into YouTube videos, like how much, like the length of the videos? I know it's such a big platform to where you could have like hour-long versus a couple minutes. Do you think that we should think about that stuff, or just kind of put together what we feel is authentic to us in that moment?
I mean, I would say probably the longest video you would ever want to put out is 30 minutes. The sweet spot is usually between like 6 and 15.
Okay.
And YouTube, if you do want to, it takes a while to make money on YouTube because you have to hit a certain threshold of watch hours and subscribers. You have to hit 1,000 subscribers, 4,000 hours of watch. But once you hit that, YouTube likes it when your videos are longer than 8 minutes, because then they can put more ads in it. But people's attention usually doesn't go longer than like 20-ish minutes. So I just kind of keep that in mind. You'll see a lot of my videos are closer to like 18 to 22 minutes or something like that, but I wouldn't necessarily go longer. But that said, if it is something that is totally engaging and it is totally authentic to you, then do it, and you know, and see how it lands.
This is kind of a quick follow-up for this as well. How have you found it in just scheduling out timing for this? Like, that's what I'm struggling with also as an athlete. Sometimes it just feels so daunting to be like, okay, trying to plan like this post for Instagram or find time to like film something for a TikTok, or same with YouTube, and like really trying to figure out the planning or timing of it all. Like, do you have any suggestions on that end?
Yeah, for sure. I can tell you what a great way to go about it is. It's not the way I do, because again, I have ADHD, and so I kind of like, I'm haphazard about all areas of my life mostly. But ideally, the most optimal way to go about it is to batch content. And so that means that, you know, you're setting aside 2 hours. In those 2 hours, you're going to make 5 TikToks, and you're going to sit down and you're going to do one like talking head YouTube video, record it, which is totally doable. It's doable if you've prepped for it beforehand, right? So if you have the idea of what your YouTube video is going to be, you know what your TikToks, and then you just sit down and do them. Most people who are super consistent, see, my superpower isn't consistency. That's something that like I'm actively always trying to work toward. But the people who are really able to nail that consistency, they're usually batching it. So what they'll do is they'll say, okay, I want to put out 4 YouTube videos a month. And in order for me to do that, 2 of them need to be like a kind of quick talking head, talking about something I can easily talk about. And maybe one of them's a vlog, blah, blah, blah. So they kind of categorize it like that. And then they sit down and they'll do however much they can do, you know, in a day, and then just do it all one day. And then you might, like, if you're editing them yourself, which you can also find somebody on a place like Fiverr or Upwork to edit your videos. If you are editing yourself, like on iMovie or something, which is super simple, what I do is if I'm feeling really good, I'll batch record and then kind of edit in downtime, you know, and then like have that going. But yeah, definitely batching is the best way to go about it if you want to optimize your time and then be consistent.
Thank you. That's super
Oh, I
helpful.
had one other question just about equipment. If you had any recommendations on any like starter cameras good for like capturing video content as well as photos and stuff. I know that it can get pretty expensive down the line, but if you had any just for like starting for like these purposes or anything.
Do you know, so what I do, I'm going to share this again. What I do, I'm going to send you directly to this place. If I can get out of here. What I do is go to YouTube, because I'm actually thinking about getting a different camera, another one. And what I do is go to Think Media. And they're just really great at reviews and everything. So I can guarantee you that on here they'll have like, you know, best cameras under $500, best camera for beginning vloggers, all kinds of stuff there. Another thing that I do, and this is why I love YouTube, is you can just say best camera for, let's say, vlogging 2020.
Yeah.
And then instantly you'll get these people, and you can even say, drill down even more under, oh yeah, look, under 500 was already there. And then you'll get people who are comparing them. And the best part about that is they'll be able to speak to exactly what your needs are. So they'll say like, this is the benefit of this camera, this is the downside. And you can say, based on you knowing if you really want to prioritize also making still images, that you need a certain amount of megapixels for that and everything. Yeah. But I would definitely, there's some great people who can drive you toward the perfect camera for you. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was so great to have you all on. And like I said before you hopped on, I was saying that I'm out here with my mom and I haven't had any human interaction other than my mom for like the last 5 days. So this is really lovely and wonderful. And yeah, I'm excited to see what you start cooking.
Yeah, I'm about to go follow Asia Evans on YouTube, like right now.
Oh,
Yeah. Asia, I want to tell you too, I went to Purdue when you were at Illinois.
Oh.
Asia was like a Big Ten champion 100-meter sprinter and shot putter before she became an Olympic bronze medalist bobsledder. So I've always been a secret fan.
Thank you.
I love it.
Family, I love that.
For sure. Well, yeah, thank you guys, Maddie and Asia, for coming. I know that I'm a big Gia Goodrich fan too, so I wasn't going to miss it, but you made it possible for us to record and put it on the website for everyone to see. And while this was our last webinar of 2020, a big honor for Gia, yay. Yeah, maybe we'll do more in the future. We're going to pause like just a little bit since attendance has been a little bit low, but that's also probably holidays, and we'll come back around in 2021. But there's like so much other fun stuff happening with Parody. So Gia will keep checking back in, and then Asia and Maddie will email you like crazy, and it'll be great. Yeah.
Yay.
Big things, lots of momentum in a lot of different areas. So it's really exciting right now.
I love that.
Thank
Yay.
you.
Well, have a great day, everybody. And feel free, make sure you connect with me, ping me and everything, because I would love to see what you're up to and support you in anything that you're creating.
Thank
Thank
you.
you again.